And I am also a family peer advocate for the Mental Health Association. I am a leader in my community, a leader in my school. I'm an agent of change.
Thank you, Maria. And those are beautiful pictures. So we brought in this image to start us off today of an iceberg because I came to this work both as a parent and as a parent leader from education. So I used to work with Chris and everyone else at Big Picture Learning. And as I became a parent of school-aged children, I started to have a very different perspective on what parent engagement really means. And so I think sometimes in education, we see the top of the iceberg, and we came today to talk to you a little bit more about what's underneath. So we're going to dig into that today. And Maria, let's see if I can actually figure out how to advance this with a screen share. Give me 1 second. Alrighty. Maria, do you want to start us off with the chat? Oops.
Okay, so do we want to share what everybody think parent engagement is?
Well, let's start with introductions, where you're from in the chat.
So yes, if you want to share in the chat where you're from and what is your role, a parent, a teacher, administration. So you can share it in the chat.
And we're also interested.
And where you're from.
That's what I was going to say. I'm curious to see where folks are from across the country. Oh, Lisa, you did PLTI at the Met in Providence? We've got coast to coast represented here. This is fantastic.
Pretty cool.
Oh, that is so cool, Lisa. We should talk more. So we actually have a lot of sites here that are close to places where we have PLTI. We'll talk about that a little bit later today. But let's talk about parent engagement. Maria?
So yeah, with one word, please describe what do you think it is, parent engagement.
So we're trying something a little fun. We want to make a word cloud. So what you'll need to do is, if you want to, you can put it in the chat, but we're hoping you could use your phone. You're going to open it up to this app called vvox.app, and then it will ask you for an ID. Once you put that ID in, you should just be able to type in your response to this question, and then we're going to actually work on making a word cloud together so we can look at what folks think. You could use one word if you'd like to. You could describe it with more than one word, but we're really trying to get a sense of the room of what people think about parent engagement.
Can you repeat the app, Jen?
Yeah, it should be on the screen here. It's vvox.app, and I'll put it in the chat also. You'll have to cut and paste that into your search bar, or you can do it on your phone. And then there's a code to put in once you get there. Okay, and I'm going to bring us up so we can actually look at what these responses are appearing like. Okay. We've got a lot of responses. This is great. All right, so I'm going to show you what they look like. Okay, so now we're going to take a look. We've got a word cloud blooming. Let's take a look at it. Okay, Maria, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you see here?
Okay, let me remove my chat box. So we see supportive adult, communication, support, listening, mutual, essential, respect, care, active, humility, family. All of them good answers.
This also reminds me for big picture folks, I think these are a lot of words that you would hear around advisory, which is the core community within a school. And so what we want to talk about a little bit more here is that we see this as a continuum around parent engagement.
Mm-hmm.
So for educators, you may know this expression of I do, we do, you do. And so we want to think about that with parent engagement, is that when we think about the first level of parent engagement, often it's the school or the system asking for something specific from parents. So the school functioning as the I, and I want this or I need this from parents. When we see the we do, we really talk about parent partnership. So what does it look like when schools are partnered closely with families so that there's an information exchange and there's listening and there's care and there's collaboration? And then we also want to talk about parent leadership. So what does it look like as parents are taking the lead in transforming education? And how do we make space for that in the work that we do together? So we want to talk a little bit about what parent, we're gonna provide some pictures of what parent leadership can look like. And then we're gonna piece that apart and talk about what that might mean in terms of the work that schools and parents do together. I'm apologizing in advance because I have a very noisy puppy who's starting to make some growls in the corner. All right, so I'm going to share a couple of stories, and then I'm going to turn it over to Maria to tell us her story of parent leadership. But in our work across the country, we have parent leadership training institutes and communities of parent leaders in a lot of different spaces. And they have some really strong examples of what it looks like when parents are stepping into leadership roles in education. So one of the first examples I'd like to share is from our network of schools, New Visions, has Parent Leadership Training Institute connected to their network of schools, which includes training opportunities for parents around leadership and advocacy work. And then the parents that go through have this great opportunity. It's a free training. They are able to be tapped for leadership committees within the schools that are directly involved in decision-making around conflict resolution and discipline, around academics. And so there's a really clear avenue for parent voice in the decision-making within the school, and that's by design. Another example here is my lovely friend, Benita Cochran from New Orleans, Louisiana. And New Orleans is a choice community for schools, which means that parents have a application process called One App. And the process itself is really complicated and difficult to navigate. And Benita has spearheaded focus groups to provide feedback from families on how this whole process could be improved as a way to actually influence system change in education. Maria, can you tell us your story of Parent Academy?
So I'm a very transparent person, and because of that, I don't like to write things down. So I wanted to speak to you from my heart. So I got kind of tired of system failing my child, and I had no direction. I had no GPS, and I was glad that I was introduced to PLTI, and PLTI gave me the tools to be able to advocate for my child. But advocacy goes beyond that. What I have done many advocacy things in my journey, but the last thing that I have done, my daughter joined a new charter school here in the city of Rochester, and it was a brand new charter school. It started this year, and unfortunately they got hit with this coronavirus, but it has been for the best. At the beginning of the school year, I see that the parents were very, very resistant to the school. There was no communications, and the kids started reacting to this. So it was very hard to keep the discipline in the classroom. It was very hard for the adults to keep the discipline because the parents were telling the children, you don't have to listen to people, because the parents were not there yet with the school. So I had a meeting with the dean of the school, and later I had a meeting with the principal, and I said, listen, why don't we do a parent academy? And they were very interested about the parent academy and asked me what it was. So I sat down, I wrote a proposal, and it's just that it's an academy for parents, by parent, and parents are the ones that take care of the topics, what is going to be discussed. They're going to be presenting, they're going to do everything, because I truly believe that it takes a village to raise my child. So we all have to be part of that village, and we all have a very important role to play in this whole education and bringing up our children. We are all teachers, you know, we are teachers, but I'm pretty sure we are parents as well. And parents need to be able to partner with the school, and the school need to listen to the parents. Some parents feel they're being talked at rather than talked to, and opening that communication door is a very important thing. So I, believe it or not, I presented this before coronavirus hit, and last week I had a meeting, and I actually have 47 parents joining the Parent Academy and looking forward to begin the conversation pretty soon.
Thank you, Maria. And I think one of the points that you've made that I think we all can relate to as educators, and many of us as parents, is the challenges that we are all experiencing as children are learning at home, and that the lion's share of that guidance and support is coming from a parent or caregiver in the home. And as schools are making decisions and districts are making decisions around returning to school or continuing remote education, there is a real need for hearing from families to make sure that solutions are designed well and can be even more successful than the past spring has been for most families. So we want to talk about some of the ways in which we can see that happening through this parent partnership work. So we're going to talk a little bit about the system of parent leadership as it relates to the Parent Leadership Training Institute, but also too, just like writ large, it is a lot more about systems of change in general. So we often talk about dual capacity and the need for schools and families to work together to uplift each other. And we really see this as like a multi-pronged piece. So we have a component of a Children's Leadership Training Institute. Last year, we presented at Big Bang, and we brought a CLTI grad, who's my son, Francis. We have the Parent Leadership Training Institute, which Maria is going to take us through in a moment. And then we also have another component. So if we have highly trained leaders that are children and parents, we also need a system that knows how to partner with them. So this session today is part of our agenda around system capacity. So this conversation is about how the system can identify opportunities to better partner with families in the work that we all do together. So I'm gonna turn it over to Maria to talk a little bit about the Parent Leadership Training Institute.
So something that I always tell my children, I have two daughters, 14 and 10, is if you don't like the system, you go in and you make changes in the system. So complaining is not an option. So PLTI, it gives parents the tools that they need and the skills that they need to be able to and do those changes. So PLTI is a 21-week program that equip parents to be agents of change. So for parents or caregivers that recognize that there's a need for changes in their community, so PLTI will give you the key to open the doors that you need to make those changes. It's a 20-week program starting with a retreat. The first 10 weeks is about social, emotional, family component part of the child's life. And then the last 10 weeks is about systems, budget, politics, media. Is a very, if you ask me, my experience has been amazing. It has given me the, not only the tools, but the confidence to be able to open doors for whatever it is that I'm advocating, especially for me advocating for my children. Jen?
One of the things that Maria mentioned around advocacy is that there's a big similarity between Big Picture and PLTI in that every parent comes in with something they care about, something they're passionate about, and something they want to change, just the way that we see young people in the Big Picture Learning Network. And similarly, we don't always understand how we can make that change initially, or we may know a little bit, but not the whole thing. And so what PLTI does is help you really understand how to identify and take apart problems and how to identify and put together solutions, and also builds this real opportunity for community. Maria and I didn't know each other before PLTI, and I have a lot of friends through that work too. And one of the things that I think is really key is that it's designed to be diverse. So every cohort has parent leaders from whenever possible, multiple school districts, socioeconomic demographics, race, language, age. And it really does provide this opportunity to realize that you're part of a movement and to build a network of parents who may be different than you, but also care about the same things you care about. So,
and actually that part is very intentional. I've been part of the process of putting PLTI together, and that part is very intentional to bring people from different social economical background, cultural background. So yeah, it is, and it makes PLTI what it is. And at the end of the 21 classes, you're like a little family. And once you graduate from PLTI, you belong to a bigger family.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about some of these components that we think would translate. These are definitely core components of PLTI as a design, but we think these are core components of any strong parent system partnership. So the first one is an example of that. It's driven by parent leaders. So each parent comes into PLTI with something that they care about, just like each parent comes into a school with something that they care about. A great example of how this work can be driven by parents is some of the work that Maria and I have engaged in here in Rochester. Since COVID, we've had recurring meetings with parents from the Rochester City School District. And those meetings are not to deliver information. Sometimes we do provide resources through those meetings, but the bulk of our time is with parents in small groups, just sharing what's on their hearts and minds with each other. And us listening so that we can help to design solutions together that will help to really meet what those needs are. And so that as a component is in any parent partnership in a school, you want to start by giving parents space to come in with those concerns and to speak with the school, but also with each other. So building that space so that the conversation can be driven by parents. Equity focused and anti-racist. So PLTI is designed, our entire curriculum is designed around racial equity. And we are really explicit about that in our work. And I think that a core component of being an inclusive partnership with parents and families is also really needs to be built on that as a fundamental. And that means that there's a lot of training and resources and conversation that has to go with it. It can't just be a stamp, it has to actually be in practice. The third bullet is inclusion. So we, as Maria and I both mentioned, these communities are super diverse, but that also means making sure that you can provide for the needs of a diverse set of parents. So for PLTI, that means that childcare and meals are provided, as well as transportation, so that families can participate in any event that we have. That means that part of our budget is exclusively designed to make sure that we can take care of those needs. And one of the things that also we want to point to is the language justice approach, which we have adopted for many of our sites. So language justice isn't just having an interpreter for families that don't speak the primary language of the dialogue, it's making every language the primary language of the dialogue. So every parent or every participant is getting a headset and is receiving the information in their in the language they're most comfortable in. So whomever is speaking, everyone can understand, and it happens in real time. And that I think has been a real transformation for a lot of our sites. We hear about it all the time. It's also really easy to do on Zoom. Just for anyone who's wondering about what you could do right now. Zoom actually has a function you can add on for an interpreter so that when you come into your Zoom room, you click on the language that you would like to hear, and it's seamless. So the entire meeting, no matter what language people are speaking, you'll be hearing it in your chosen language. And then the last piece is community. I think a lot of big picture schools do this well, is making space just to be together. So as we're inviting families, or Maria and I may be engaged with our alumni planning team and planning events for the Rochester community of families, some of them are just meals. They're just times to come together and to connect without any other specific agenda, because that is just a core component of actually building a place that people want to come to, not just when they have concerns, but where they know that they can come and be nourished in a lot of different ways. Maria, is there anything you would like to add about that?
When it comes to the whole parent engagement and PLTI, the one thing that is the greatest thing about going through the process of PLTI is giving parents a voice. Sometimes, and through other works that I have done after PLTI, I've noticed that people that are in positions like administrator, providers, anything like that, they don't necessarily give parents a voice. They just tell parents what to do, basically. And the fact that parents, without the parents, we don't have a children. We don't, without the parents, you don't have services to provide. So giving parents that voice and partnering with the parents is very important, not only for the services that we provide or for the classroom or for the school, but also because the bottom line is the one that benefits from that partnership is the child. So.
So you can find Maria and I in that little tiny red arrow in New York State, right on the border of Lake Ontario. And the other side of that lake is Canada, not shown. But you can also see our other sites all across the country. So we heard from a lot of you in the chat about where you're located. There may already be a PLTI in your community. And we'll share our contact information at the end of the session. So if you would like to learn more about where you can find a PLTI near you, or if you're interested in making a PLTI near you, we can help you with that. And then as another part of our design, we talk about this as our system capacity work. So that's this conversation we're having right now, which is really helping to expand what different agencies, organizations, government, education see as the role of parents. We actually have a session that we recommend for our parent leaders called Seats at the Table. And what that's designed to do is to start to identify these vacant spaces at leadership tables where parents should be seated. So whether it is your school board or your charter school board or leadership committees, decision-making committees within your school, it's looking for those spaces where there should be parents. And part of that work also is direct technical assistance that we do with some organizations. You're going to get some free technical assistance today. So we do work to help build community with families and with organizations. We also do work around evaluation. So bringing families into the process of evaluating how well a school or system is meeting their needs and partnering and listening, as well as being designers in solutions within that system. And a lot of this work, I think, is also directly tied to what we found as success during this pandemic, which is building these spaces for voice for families that bring them to the table. We have Zoom meetings all the time. Maria's nodding. Like I know many of you are in that space right now, but we have in this work, when we invite families to have voice, they show up. And that's something that we want to point to. Maria, I would love if you would share a little bit about the work that you've done with the Health Foundation and working with Coldwater, because I think you've hit most of these bullets in that work.
Sure. Before I go into that, so it's very important that, so for example, in person, you cannot get 10 parents to show up in a PTO meeting. And hopefully that because everything has gone virtual, you wish that parent will show up. But if you don't develop that relationship of giving parents a voice in the conversation, you can do it and offer them $1,000 for an hour and they will not show up because they don't feel like they've been heard. So the Greater Rochester Health Foundation, they provided funding for different organizations, but they wanted to basically form a partnership in which the organizations and the staff, they look at parents and they be able to see parents as equal and work together as partners. For the organizations where the U of R, Villa of Hope, Hillside, and the Open Door Mission. And the Open Door Mission is a shelter, but I was working specifically with a shelter for women and children. And from the moment I heard the name of the organization, my heart was directed to that. For the last year, I have been working with the staff and the residents of a shelter for women and children. And when I walked in, it was a total distrust. There was no trust. There was no communication. It was parents being angry, staff being frustrated, trying to form a partnership in this kind of environment and language and culture. It was very, very difficult at the beginning. I ran to Jen for help, and Jen came over one day and we did an exercise. And after that exercise, it felt like everything shifted, and parents were able to understand the staff and where they were coming from. Started to see parents as equal, and started to understand that without the parents and having that communication with parents, this program will not function. It will be a total dysfunction and argument and resistance from the parents all the way through the program. The program has a turnaround door of 3 months. So imagine on 3 months having a family that you're constantly arguing and fighting with, when in fact you're trying to provide a very needed service of mothers that are homeless with their children. It has been an amazing experience since the parents. I had 3 parents and 3 staff members working together. Rules in the house had changed. The way that the survey parents had changed. The parents that were involved created changes that are still in the house, that are still in place, and other parents are being benefiting from the changes that these parents helped create. It has been an amazing experience. Actually, one of the parents of the program left the shelter, and she is now paying it forward by working at a different shelter for women and children. So it has been an amazing experience, and these are things that happen when you actually look at parents as your equal, and parents as they're having a voice because they know what is best for the child. You might be an expert in being a teacher, being a school administrator, and being an administrator at a hospital, or whatever it is that we do. But we parents, and we are all here parents, we parents are experts on all children. So bringing parents to the table, giving them a voice, and what Jen said was very important. The significance of having parents that don't have transportation. How do you expect them to join the the table in the conversation? Parents that have young children, how do you expect them to come to the conversation? Make it easy for the parents, but also, besides making it easier for the parents, open your heart and open your ears to their conversation, to their voice and what they have to say, because there's a lot to say. And being able to work together is better than spending an entire school career fighting against them, when the bottom line is that our children are the ones that are either getting affected or getting the benefit out of our partnership. Jen.
Thank you, Maria. So I'm going to pause here to open up for a Q&A because I think we had a couple of really good questions in the chat. And also because we are ahead of schedule, Maria, so we have a little extra time. So a couple of questions that came up in the chat, I would like to sort of pause so we can address because I think they're timely and important. And also I think you guys are going to be really excited to hear the answers to these questions. So the first question was that I wanted to address was about the activity that Maria talked about. That we did at Coldwater at the Open Door Mission. And this is a super easy takeaway for school folks in the big picture landscape. It was a pick-me-up. So when you are bringing families into your school, do pick-me-ups. So it was a team building activity that we did with a small group of parents in order to introduce this, to build a safe space of collaboration and to make a little bit of lightness so that people felt safe and connected and happy. And so it's a real easy thing to do. So every time you're designing an opportunity for families, you could start with some sort of a fun team building game. So that's a quick win for big picture schools if you're trying to work on your parent partnership. The second question was in here about the interpretation. So interpretation is not provided by Zoom. You do need to contract interpreters. You need to have one interpreter for every language that you'll have real-time interpretation for. So the great thing about this is that you don't have to find someone nearby because you're working remotely. So we have in ours, we've been partnered for many of our sessions with a group out of New Orleans, but there's lots of different groups that you could find to contract for interpretation. I also just want to sort of open it for folks to come off mic if you'd like to voice your question, because there's a lot in the chat.
Actually, Jen, can I comment about the last two things that you said?
Yes,
So
of course. Go ahead.
the exercise that Jen did was amazing, but remember, like people say, money can buy love. Uh, I found that in my daughter's school, what made the difference was to allow the parents to have a voice. So the principal has a lot of resources, and she was spending a lot of money on the parents, investing in the parents. But until she was open to have that conversation with parents and let the parents have a conversation and actually lead the conversation, she was not able to get parents together to have that conversation. And I'm telling you, the second last community meeting that we had, every parent of the school showed up at that meeting. So giving parents incentives is a good thing, but giving them a voice is even better. And when it comes to the interpretation, actually last week I was interpreting for uh, New York State Charter School Network. And I actually, if you're going to use the interpretation or you're going to use a parent or whatever, just FYI, the person that's doing the interpretation is not able to speak to the big group. I found that out last week. It's very interesting.
Thanks, Maria. Do we have other questions that folks would like to raise at this time before we jump? We are going to do a little bit of small group opportunity to play with some of the tools that we brought today for you to help get a little bit deeper into your parent partnership. Maggie.
How hard is it to get school districts to participate? I mean, I'm assuming they have to pay and they also have to be willing.
Oh, so do you mean to have school districts to run parent leadership training institutes?
Yeah.
So that's a really great question. It's not as expensive as you might think, first of all. Secondly, we don't have, some of our sites are partnered with educational institutions as what we would like. So there's usually an organization that is sort of the steward of the Parent Leadership Training Institute. And often they are all different kinds of agencies or organizations that are focused on, sometimes it's like, you know, K through 8, or I'm sorry, early childhood education, or maybe functioning around some sort of a civics goal. And so most of our sites, it is a really reasonable budget. Maggie, if you email me offline, I'll share with you a little bit of our framing for that. And we provide resources and technical support around fundraising to keep those sites sustainable. And so some of them are partnered directly with education systems. Jacksonville, Florida is through an education fund, for example. And others are partnered with a wide variety of different organizations. So they're not all exclusively tied to education. Great question. Any other specific questions before we blow your minds with these breakout rooms? Okay. Hi, Charlie Plant. I just saw you. Okay, so what we're going to do, we brought with you a really great tool, I think, that's going to be a takeaway that you'll be able to play with today in breakout rooms, and then you'll be able to have access to it after the session so that you can bring it back to your communities. So it is what we call our education assessment or self-assessment document. It is kind of a rubric, but it's really a reflective document that you can use to sort of get a sense from your community of families and from your staff and leadership at your school around how well you're doing in partnering and providing those spaces for families to really engage in these real ways. So we're going to take a look at it very briefly on screen, and then we're going to go into breakout rooms where you'll be able to take a closer look with a group of new friends. And then in those breakout rooms, you'll be able to have a discussion around this as a tool and maybe cook up some strategies around what you might like to do with this tool or how you might like to improve it. So I do apologize because my screen is loading. So give me one more moment and then I'll give you a little snapshot. But while that's happening, I'll talk a little bit about what the breakout room, what we call small group protocol. So in our work with parent leaders, we often approach a challenge as a small group, and we ask those small groups to self-organize. So what that means is that we're going to ask for someone to volunteer to be a leader or a facilitator of the dialogue. So not necessarily a leader, top-down leader, but someone who's going to sort of make sure that that conversation is happening. We're going to look for someone to take notes. So in your small groups, it should be someone who has easy access to a keyboard because you will be typing on a Google Doc. And we're going to ask for someone to be a timekeeper to monitor how much time is remaining. So once we send you out to small groups, we will ask that you, in your groups, spend a little bit of time determining that at the top. And then you'll have some prompts and discussion to actually go in together to look at this document, which is still loading. So it looks familiar when you get into your breakout rooms. So this is our Considering Parent Partnership in Education Systems document. So what we would think about with this is that it would be something that an individual would complete, whether it be a parent in your school, a staff member, a student, or a leader. And they would sort of rate what they experience with each of these different points on the document. And then you would look at them as a whole and see where those trends are and identify opportunities to improve the way that partnerships are happening with families in your school. So as we go into breakout rooms, David, are we almost ready to send folks?
We are ready now.
Okay. So as you get into your breakout room, there is that Google Doc in the chat. So hopefully everybody was able to access that. Could I see some heads nodding if folks were able to get into that Google Doc? Okay, awesome.
Yeah, helpful thing is that you might lose the chat thread if when you go into the room. So grab that link now. Yeah,
so please make sure you have that link. Right now it is 4:42. So we're gonna give folks about 10 minutes only. There's like 3 questions, but whatever conversation you have in your breakouts is the conversation that you are meant to have. As you get sent out, Zoom will tell you very briefly what number breakout room you're getting sent to. So please remember that. So as you go into the document, your note taker can put the notes in that number of the breakout room. Welcome back, everybody. I love the magic of Zoom being whisked away and then whisked back. I know we had limited time, so hopefully you were able to dig in a little bit. I'm going to turn it over to Maria to do a short debrief before we wrap up today.
Okay. And let me see. Trying to pull off my screen. So, 1 second. Okay, so for group 1, some of the things that what stand out about the self-assessment parent partnership document is like it's too many words and boring, easy for parents to dismiss. Some parents want teacher to take initiative and vice versa. What do you think is missing from our missing or could be improved? That parents don't know how to be involved, what will be done, and also what will be done with the information and how is the information going to be utilized. That's how might this be used in your contest. Advisory, it can be used in advisory with parents and to get inputs from them. That's for group number 1. Group number 2, think that parents are the center, are at the center, having some knowledgeable staff are further down in the priority. What do you think is missing? Is governance, leadership team a part of this? Is a question, informal or informal? Maybe they can abund about that. How might this be used in your contest? Is bring to the attention of some schools of PTO is lacking. And I'm sorry, help build parents representation in school leadership team. That's very good. Group number 3. What stands out about the self-assessment is information is provided in your primary language. Most schools don't have much connection with parents. You need internet access. What do you think is missing or could be improved? This make it too easy for unaware principals to answer sometimes or often, and they really need to change what they are doing with families. Need better qualifiers, more specifics. No room for authentic answer. What are parents' job, etc. Need to be amplified. That says families are part of the real leadership of the school. How might this be used in your contest? I am not sure it can be used. It is entirely as we have other surveys we use, but some of these could be added to assisting servicing tools. Group 4, what stands out about the self-assessment, provide a framework to start discussion, parent center, making parents have everything they need to engage in their students' education, build around continuum model, growth model, childcare provided. What do you think is missing? How to address a misunderstanding or resolve conflict in the group? What does it mean, staff report? If we don't have a guide for unsure, sometimes descriptors, equity piece missing here, white privilege is missing here that might be unconscious to folks. This could lead to an unequal conversation. How might this be used? Might be a good start to build capacity, but don't want to use it for too long. Might support parents in getting them to define their own outcomes. Good starts, perhaps take straight to advisory parents. Might be beginning to try to get people involved, perhaps simplified version. Um, take to take to staff to use as reflective tool. Where are we? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? Perhaps share with staff to measure where parents' involvement is.
Maria, can we
And
pause for a second since we're
sure,
just about out of time?
sure. I'm
I'm
sorry.
so sorry. These are great headlines and you're rapid fire and I appreciate it, but I do want to honor folks' time as we wrap up.
Sure.
This Google Doc will be made available if you would like to continue getting a little bit more detail from those other groups. Thank you, Maria, for racing us through in our last moment. I did want to share a couple pieces that I dropped into the chat at the top of this conversation as we came back together. We wanted to give a shout to some, oh, you're so welcome. We had some folks who asked for specific resources. We can make those available. Please shoot me an email. We also have a webinar next week about getting parent voice into decision-making for reopening schools. So please, there's a bit.ly in the chat if you would like to register for that webinar. We would love to see you there. So thank you so much to everyone, and thank you, Maria, as well.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
We're so grateful, and please reach out in that email if you would like more information or more resources about our work.
Please consider giving feedback. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Jen. Great to see you.
Good to see you too, Charlie.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see you in your room there. You look terrific.
Thanks, Charlie. So do you.
Yeah. What the hell?
So it was so great to see so many folks from all over the country who are invested in more effective partnerships with families, and we hope we'll get to see you more.
Yeah, I really learned a lot just from looking at that document.
Thanks, Charlie.
Bye-bye.